Hello, everybody. Welcome to our class today, Planting Perennials. We'll talk about when to plant, where to plant, and what to prune in the fall. So what is a perennial? Perennials are typically cold, hardy plants that grow back in the spring. When grown in the right conditions, they may live 3 to 5 years, and some may live for decades. Some may need to be divided regularly to maintain their blooms and vigor, and others do just fine with little to no maintenance. Perennials are generally require less water once they're established, and many perennials are beneficial to pollinators. Biennials are often confused with perennials. So biennials, they're a plant the first year and they bloom the second year. So they take 2 years to complete their life cycle, not blooming until the second year, like foxglove and hollyhock. So on a plant tag, it'll show you a lot of information that's sun to part shade, the moisture, the height, and the growing zone. It will be listed when the plant is a perennial. So Alaska has many growing zones. In Anchorage and the surrounding area is generally zone 3 to 4. Of course, zone 3 if you're closer to the mountains, zone 4 if you're closer to the water. And then Homer is clear up to a zone 6 and 7 because they are farther south and they're a lot warmer. So read the plant tag. When buying perennials, the growing zone is generally listed on the tag. Zone 5 or higher will be considered an annual in Anchorage and north. If you're on the Kenai Peninsula, the Aleutian Chain, or southeast, you may be up to a zone 7. And then get to know your yard. Each yard has microclimates. You may have a windy section or a lot of trees that shade an area. And of course, that'll be a lower growing zone. Think about these areas when you're planning a garden bed. There are hardy perennials that'll do well in even those problem areas. This is your growing zones. This map is readily available. It's a USDA map. You can see where Anchorage is. It's listed now as zone 4. They recently changed that from zone 3, but there still are those microclimates near the mountains where you are truly a zone 3. So this, like I said, this is a USDA growing zone readily available on the internet. And then bloom times. Timing is everything. When you're planting a garden, you want things that bloom early spring, mid-spring, late spring, early summer, midsummer, and late summer, and a few that bloom all summer. These are all bloom times to consider when you're planning your garden bed. You want something to be blooming all season. It's nice to look into a garden bed and always see something blooming. Perennials, unlike annuals that bloom all summer, will have specific bloom time. If you love stargazer lilies, you should know that they bloom in August or early September. Siberian iris bloom late spring along with columbines and primrose, and peonies bloom from late June to mid-July. So here's a list of spring bloomers, early summer bloomers, midsummer bloomers, late summer bloomers, fall bloomers, and then all summer bloomers. So the all summer bloomers generally need to be deadheaded to continue blooming, but they will bloom generally from, say, mid-spring through late summer. And then location, location, location. Is your growing location full sun, part shade, or full shade? So the definitions are full sun is 6 or more hours of direct sunlight. Part sun is 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight per day, including some afternoon sun. Part shade is 4 to 6 hours of direct sun per day, mostly before midday. And then full shade is less than 4 hours of direct sun per day. And then shade can be beautiful. There are ligularia, hostas, ferns, astilbe, viola, heliobor, monkshood, coral bells, bleeding heart, foxglove, which is a biennial, trillium, and lily of the valley all do well in shade areas, even up to full shade. And then, so planting your perennial. You've picked up a nice perennial at the garden center. You know the bloom time, the height, and the amount of light needed to keep the plant healthy. The best time to plant perennials is in the spring and in the fall. They generally like cooler roots. So you can keep a perennial in the pot until the time is right. It's a little warm right now to plant perennials. If you have some, you can keep them in the pot until, say, early September. Choose a spot in the yard with the right amount of light for the plant. Dig a hole slightly deeper and twice as wide as the pot. Add compost to the soil that you'll fill in around the plant root ball. Lots of nice organic matter. The compost is essential. And then when you take the plant out of the pot, if the roots are bound, tease the roots and loosen them. If they're wrapped around like they were in the bottom of the pot, they'll continue to grow like that unless you loosen them. And then watch the depth. Most plants want to be planted at the same depth, not deeper or shallower than they were in the pot. Peonies especially are very sensitive about the depth. And then water well. You could put a bit of mulch around the plant to keep the moisture in, but don't pile the mulch up around the stem as it'll cause rot. And then add a plant support while you're planting and when the plant is small. This way you don't disturb the roots. And once you've got it planted, you want to fertilize with Arctic Grow 832-16 fertilizer. This will help establish the roots and give big blooms. And I always like to keep track in a garden journal of the variety I planted, the date I planted, and the bloom time. That way, if that plant dies, I know I have to replace it with a midsummer bloomer. Excuse me. And then caring for your perennials. Spacing. When a garden is densely planted, it's prone to problems with fungus and sooty mildew. Spacing makes for better air circulation and easier maintenance. And you can divide plants that have become too bunched or overgrown. Water, and then you want to water well at least 1 inch of water per week for established plants. Water deeply, less often. This helps establish the roots. A covering of mulch will help hold the moisture in during the heat of the summer. Fertilizing. When to fertilize is as important as what fertilizer to use. Generally, you will fertilize perennials twice per year in early spring when the foliage begins to appear and early fall to strengthen the roots before winter. Some plants are heavy feeders. Do your research. If you have roses, they benefit from frequent feeding. Peonies are heavy mineral feeders. The Arctic Grow Peony Blend has the minerals that they need to produce big blooms. And generally, the rule is the slower the plant grows, the less fertilizer it will need. Plants that produce an abundance of blooms will need to be fed more. And in the top right there, you can see that's the Peony Blend that we make here at Alaska Mill and Feed. It's the Arctic Grow. Everything Arctic Grow is our brand. And that Peony Blend has the specific minerals that peonies will need, like I said, to make those big blooms. And then what to prune back in the fall. Any plants with disease, mildew, or insect problems should be cut back and disposed of. Do not put this foliage into your compost bin. You're just going to add problems. And then leaving some of the foliage provides interest in the winter, shelter, and feeds many birds. Coneflowers and black-eyed Susan, Virginia creeper are just a few that birds enjoy in the winter. After the first hard frost, cut back the spent bloom spikes at the base. Prune foliage down to just a few inches and clear away debris to prevent disease. Cut off any old or damaged foliage and then leave any new growth over winter. Sometimes this helps protect the crown of the plant, and then cut it off in the spring once it's emerged and it's brown and dead. And then any evergreen plants should be left over winter and dead leaves cut off in the spring. And then remove hosta foliage after frost, as they can harbor slugs. Slugs like hostas, they'll get under those leaves. And if you leave those dead leaves in the spring, you will find that there'll be slug eggs under there. So dispose of those leaves.
If you guys have any questions throughout the presentation, Just make sure you post them in the chat box, and we're checking that occasionally, and we can answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, please don't hesitate. If you have questions about anything we're going over, type it into the box and I'll answer as we go along. And then some plants like astilbe perform best if they're not pruned back in the fall. Most ground covers like sedum or false rock cress do not need to be pruned in the fall. Virginia, or pig squeak it's called, does better when not pruned. The moose will find them early in the spring and eat the leaves. Virginia seems to benefit from this by growing new healthy foliage. Coral bells can be cut back in late summer to reveal new foliage underneath. Don't cut back further to remove the winter don't cut back further, but do remove the winter damage in the spring. Peonies should be cut back when the foliage turns red from the frost. And then lavender flowering stems should be cut back after bloom. Do not prune after late August. There are some perennial lavenders that'll survive here. And then when cutting down, oh, I must have lost my thought there on that one, sorry. Next, so cutting back in the fall. Here's the list of plants that you do cut back in the fall. That's going to be your astilbe, bee balm, phlox, lilies, hosta, yarrow, columbine, daylily, iris, peony, Solomon seal. And then in this, what you wait and cut in the spring are annual flowers that reseed like cosmos, zinnias, and sunflowers. Ornamental grasses for height and interest, you want to leave those all winter. And then butterfly weed, ferns, and coral bells should be left until spring to protect the crown of the plant. And hydrangeas you prune in the early spring after blooming. And that's it. There are still a few perennials available at our garden center. Right now, most plants are at least 20% off, and our veggie starts are 25% off. And we're always welcome. We welcome you to come in and shop and ask any questions that you have. Always someone on staff that can answer a question for you.
Sheila, I do have a question. So when you're pruning back your perennials, peonies in specific, how far down do you cut them down to?
You always want to leave about an inch of the plant showing so that you know where it is once the spring shows. Don't cut them clear to the ground because that could let moisture and bugs and everything down into there. If they're a hollow stem, cut them at an angle so that the water runs off. But everything you want to cut to about an inch or two. Okay.
Do we have any other questions?
Okay, I don't see any other questions. So thank you for attending the class. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.